At the crack of dawn in Sunderland, a man and his dog have been violently assaulted and stabbed in their home by two unknown assailants. Nicola Stark is the newest and youngest of Northumbria Police forensic team. It is her job to find the forensic evidence which will help to identify any suspects and connect them to the crime. Crime Science Manager Catherine Bolam provides support from CSI headquarters. Nicola is looking for two distinctive footwear patterns that could belong to the offenders. There's also evidence to suggest that the IP, or injured party, used an air pistol to defend himself. Outside, detectives have spotted what could be vital evidence in the neighbor's garden. The victim has told police that his dog bit one of the assailants. So it's possible that their blood could be on the knife. Less than a mile away, the police search team has found a potential suspect. As the search continues for the second suspect, Lee Dunn is taken to Southwick Police Station. Nicola has been assigned the case. Detectives begin by questioning Lee Dunn. With no leads to identify the missing offenders, CID turn their attention to CCTV footage obtained from near the crime scene. Detectives believe that the balaclava that was recovered earlier in the day belongs to the missing man. Nicola calls the head of forensics Kirsty Potter. They both believe that's the lab's first priority should be to examine the balaclava for the second offender DNA. The screen to find the analyze in the saliva requires wetting the mask, so the dry blood is recovered first. The Castle gives scientists an instant visual indications as to whether or not there is blood present on the fabric. Areas are swabbed and a drop of phenolphthalein reagent and hydrogen peroxide is added. If their blood presents the swab rapidly, it turns pink. With blood found, they cut out and retain a section of the mask. Now they can move on to the WEP testing, find if there's presence of analyze, an enzyme found in saliva. The sample will now be sent to a DNA lab. The blood will be compared against the victim's DNA, the saliva will be run through the National DNA database, in hope that it flags up a name for the second offender. In the violent stabbing cases, detectives are awaiting their forensic lab results. They're hoping DNA in the saliva found on the homemade balaclava could lead them to their second suspect, the name Dunn. As the forensic team looks to start a new strategy, the detectives have uncovered another lead. The new suspect has 171 arrests to his name and is well known to the police. But they now need to find forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. The knife is sent to the lab, the police start a search for the named criminal. Touch DNA can last up to 6 weeks on a surface, so if the second offender has previously owned the knife, his DNA could still be there. But it's not as straightforward as just swapping the handle. The second suspect has been found and arrested. But so far the investigation team haven't unearthed any forensic evidence to establish if he's linked to the crime. CID believe the second suspect that he has injuries from a bite mark from the victim's dog. It could hold forensic potential, so CSI Nicola is sent to custody to photograph it. But while taking the pictures, the suspect makes a remark that raises further suspicion. If the BB gun recovered from the scene was shot at the second suspect in defense at close range, there is a chance that DNA has transferred to the weapon during the struggle. Despite the unexplained marks on his body, the detective doesn't have any evidence to charge him with, so he was released while further forensic testing can be done on the gun. The last hope in the forensic strategy for identifying the second offender now rests entirely on finding DNA on the barrel of the victim's B gun. 2 days later, the results against Lee Dunn pleaded guilty to aggravated burglary with an offensive weapon and was jailed for 10 years. The second offender is still unknown. A 27-year-old woman has allegedly been raped by 2 men in a block of flats. The police describe it as a stranger rape when a victim is attacked by a suspect that they have either never met or have only met immediately before the attack. Both suspects have fled the scene, and the best chance of identifying, they now rest on crime scenes manager Alan Sayers and his forensic team. Detective Cassie Hyland needs to know who was renting the rape took place Araz Mustafa Abdullah. They now have a name, prints, semen could be crucial. Evidence further down the line. The fastest way of identifying suspects in a rape case is to find traces of their DNA on the victim. The victim is taken to a specialist sexual assault referral center, or SARC, for medical examination and to have swabs taken by a forensic nurse. These swabs will be taken by Fiona. The swab will be inserted into the vagina and can last up to 7 days. The victim swabs will be to the lab first thing in the morning to test for the presence of semen. As well as swabs, the victim needs to provide a full account of the incidents to detectives. Due to her learning difficulties, her mum has come along for support. At the forensic lab in Wakefield, the scientists have begun the analysis of the victim's swabs. Sally Hill next step is to, with the help of the scientists, need to extract and interpret the DNA from the semen. If successful, the results could provide the evidence needed to identify the two suspects. Araz Abdullah, whose name they discovered at the crime scene, and the unknown other man, who picked up the victim at the bus stop. With no available CCTV from where the rape took place, the police are hoping footage from a local bus will give them a face. The semen extracted from the victim's samples is now being processed at the DNA lab. If a certain barcode is used to sample an individual DNA on a database, it will give the police a name. In this case, there's a problem. There is a mixture of two males' DNA. It's difficult for the scientist to separate or interpret the results of mixed profiles without DNA reference samples from one of the two suspects. 3 days after the alleged rape, Araz Abdullah arrives at Southwick Police Station. Araz's DNA is sent off to these if it matches one of the profiles in the mixture. Now, detectives can begin the interview phase and get his account of what happened. Araz said he was forced to have sex with the victim or he would have been killed. The person kicked down the door and said, "Do it now or I will kill you." According to his forensic evidence suggest that was a lie, so therefore was charged of sexual assault. At the lab, scientists are loading Araz's DNA sample to see if they can identify it as one of those in the complex mixture. Now, extracted, they are left with the unique barcode of the second suspect, known only as Saheed. The National DNA Database contains DNA profiles for every person charged with an offence. It has 6 million profiles. Although Kirsty has authorized a search, Middle East males make up less than 1% of those stored on the database. The two offender DNA is known. Detectives are waiting to hear if it matches anyone on the national database. Saheed Mahmood Rasuli, but immigration has no lead on where he's living. 3 days later, an arrest was made. The police concluded that he intentionally penetrated the vagina of a woman with his penis when she did not consent, and you did not reasonably believe that she was consenting. That's clearly Section 1 of the Sexual Offence Act 2003.